What's up, everybody? It's Halfbreed here, and I'm back with my OP12 leader tutorial and decklist breakdown series. So today we're doing Kuzan, and Kuzan is kind of like, it feels like a big revival for blue as a color, you know. Blue had been kind of on the wayside for a long time, only being like a supporting color for some decks, until Doflamingo finally hit that critical mass of being broken. And then after that, we had Buggy. But both like Doflamingo and Buggy are these more like, I don't know, they're like all-in style creature aggro decks. And Kuzan's a little bit different than that. He has some of those vibes, but it is a really nice new addition to blue as a color. And I think it's going to be one of the things that helps really bring blue back. So first of all, of course, we got to talk about the Kuzan leader, big man himself. And he is the ultimate looter. He does a lot of looting. And so looter is a term that I use a lot. It's from the original Magic the Gathering Merfolk Looter, which came out in like 1998, I think, was the card was printed, maybe 99. So it was a card that let you draw a card and then discard a card. And this card's very similar. It's usually the opposite, where you discard a card and then you draw a card back. But you have so many of these discard and draw effects that you get really a lot of value and a lot of consistency. Yeah, I think the discard then draw term is now known as rummage, as Kebby G is saying. But the thing that makes this leader strong, right? I'll read the full thing. So when you trash a card from your hand due to your Navy card effects, you may draw an equal number of cards that was trashed by that effect. So if you trash 2, you draw 2. For every card you trash, you draw 1. And this is not limited, and it's not your turn only, right? It triggers on both players' turn, and it triggers any number of times on those turns. So you can activate this ability over and over and over and over again and constantly filter your hand. But it only triggers off of Navy card effects. So if there are other cards that make you discard a card, like for example, the 0 cost Gum Gum Rain event, if you play that and you discard a card, you don't draw one because that's Straw Hat and not Navy. So it's secretly a like very old style blue tempo deck where you're just trying to slowly gain advantage on your opponent and then try and like overwhelm them before the game goes on too long. But the real strength of the deck is the consistency that is gained with the leader effect, drawing and discarding you a bunch. So to me, Kuzan at heart is a tempo deck, and that's kind of a term that is hard to explain to people. And I'm working on some other video of like what tempo is as a whole in card games. But tempo in this case, when you're talking about a tempo deck means a deck that needs to be able to change gears depending on the matchup and what you're doing over time, right? So most of the time you're going to start every game slightly from behind because you're going to be a little bit slower than some of the fastest aggro decks at establishing your game plan. But at some point you're going to try and turn the board from behind into being ahead, right? You got to flip the board into your favor, and then you have to switch gears from what I like to call like not losing the game into winning the game. You need to be able to switch roles during different points of the game depending on how it goes down. So the loots help you find your key pieces. There's a bunch of like combo pieces and tempo plays that you're looking for. And it really is like a curve out deck where you're looking to, you know, do a thing on 2, play a guy on 4, play a guy on 6, play a guy on 8, play a guy on 10, right? And just play a card every turn and use that value and extra board presence and tempo to kill your opponent before the game goes on too long. And the deck really does prefer going second. You have a bunch of even curve cards. Your best cards are like 6 cost, 8 cost, and then you have a bunch of good 4s as well. So it is kind of a die roll reliant deck. You want to win the die roll and go second as often as possible, and it can be punishing sometimes not to. So this is my Kuzan deck list right now. It's very straightforward. It's all 4s and 2s. We got, 12 2Ks, 8 events. The deck only really has, it has 16 counterless cards with the Cavendish. And I'm not getting very fancy with this list. This is just trying to be as straightforward as possible and do the Kuzan play on every game. So the first thing we got to talk about for the Kuzan deck definitely is the 3 extremely busted new cards that the Kuzan deck gets access to. And these 3 cards are really like the core of the whole deck. They're so good. Sengoku is an insane level searcher. It's the best searcher that's ever been printed. 3 is a little expensive, but for 3, you may discard 1 card from your hand. You look at the top 5 cards and you take 2 Navy cards and add both of them to your hand. And because of the leader effect, you draw a card back. So you're discarding 1 and drawing 3 new cards. It just provides you so many cards in hand so fast. And I've won some games with Kuzan where I just literally go Sengoku into play 2 more Sengoku into have 10 cards in hand, right? And then I just never die and I go a whole bunch of Garbs. So, and the thing that makes this card so good to me too is that it actually has counter as well. Normally a lot of times these 3 cost draw 2s don't have counter, like the Darishi or those style of effects. But this is a character that has counter, and it doesn't even just draw you 2 cards, it draws you 3. It's so good. So other than that, we have the 6 cost Kuzan. So it's a 6/8 Navy type. If your hand size is 5 or more, this character's cost is +1. And on play, you may discard a card from your hand. Up to 1 of your opponent's characters cannot attack until the end of their next end phase. This is one of the most insane tempo plays ever. Its stat line is so pushed as a 6/8 vanilla, which was a card that people used to play in competitive level decks anyway. Just in general, you would put 6/8 vanillas in your deck back in the day, right? And for the cost of discarding 1 card that you're going to draw right back with your leader effect, you stop any character from attacking. And that's any cost, any size, and it just provides you with so much of a swing because they can't attack, and it gets around any protection effects or whatever because it doesn't remove it from the board. But it just means that you get put so far ahead in the race, and you gain all this life over time by canceling out an entire attack, that you get to very quickly end the game with the big body. And the fact that it also gives itself +1 cost in so many scenarios is really strong, especially in a world of 9 cost Linlins. This doesn't get hit by any of the 6 cost or less removal. And it's also really good into Zoro because being an 8k power card means it's much easier to defend if they attack into it. And it's a nice 6 cost so they can't attack into it twice. So it keeps you alive and it adds pressure, right? And then the card that really wins you almost every game is the Monkey D. Garp, right? This is Luffy Taro on steroids. It's it's like 9 cost Sanji without having to work that hard. And so it's 8 for an 8,000 power. You may trash 1 card from your hand. Play up to 1 blue Navy type character with a power of 8,000 or less other than Monkey D. Garp. So most of the time you're going to do Garp into Kuzan to play 2 8Ks and also stop them from being able to attack. And most of the time you're going to play 2 in a row, right? You'll go Garp something followed by Garp something. And once you untap with 4 8,000 power characters, your opponent is most likely going to die. So by the time your second Garp gets to actually untap and attack, that's usually when you win the game. So these are the other big bodies that we play off of Garp. Obviously, the main one is going to be Kuzan, but these are the other two options that are also really good. There's the new 7/8 Sakazuki, which is just on play if your leader is Navy draw 2. And then it also has an activate main of you discard 1 card and you give 1 Rested Dawn to a leader or character. So it helps you push extra damage, the Sakazuki, with just 1 extra Rested Dawn. Good against all the 6k leaders as well, obviously, to help your leader attack for 6k. And just helps you refuel in the late game if you were forced to counter a bunch early. The other option is the 8-cost Aramaki from OP6. This is an 8/8 blocker, and activate main, you have to trash a card from your hand and bottom deck a character with a cost of 2 or less. Then the character gains +3 power. So you can't give it +3 power unless there actually is a character in play for you to bottom deck. So either your opponents or maybe even your own, like, searchers or stuff like that, you could bottom deck. But the power buff does help in a lot of situations, both to kill them in the late game or to just help you clear or to help you kill larger characters, right? If they do play like an 11 or 12,000 power character of their own, this helps you attack into them. And of course, it's a really nice blocker against various low to the ground aggressive threats. Aramaki, you know, really helps you most against like red Rayleigh and yellow green Law. Okay, then we have our 2k suite. I'm playing the full 12 just because I want to be extra safe, but there's probably room to cut 1 or 2 of these. The new one you get is Hina, so it's a 3-cost 3,000 power 2k, and activate main, you can rest it and trash 1 card from your hand. Up to 1 of your opponent's characters with an original cost of 4 or less cannot activate blocker. This helps you finish them in the late game, of course. Make some of your late game cards unblockable. Gets through any like Lucky Ruse or Uroges or whatever random other blockers they might be playing. I like to call it the blue lime juice. You know, Shanks has the lime juice card, which won a bunch of games. And then the old 2Ks that you get to play is Suru, which now is like gets a whole new angle in this deck, where on play you can trash 2 and your opponent has to return 1 character from play into their hand. So that means any cost, if they only have 1 9-drop in play, they got to return it to hand. And so that's a nice play. And it used to be you'd have to discard 2 and it would be really expensive. But with your leader, you'll draw those 2 right back. So sometimes it's just a 5-cost bounce any cost character if they're low. And then the real all-star in 2Ks, I think, is this Gion. The Gion is so sweet against so many matchups. So if you put this into play, then your turn, once per turn, when your opponent activates an event, they must place 1 card from their hand at the bottom of their deck. Basically, if they try and use an event to counter out of an attack or remove 1 of your characters or anything like that, they have to also discard an additional card if it happens during your turn, right? Really good against Gum Gum Giant, though we'll see if that sticks around. Really good against any of the like Dead Man's Game or Red Hawk or 1-cost events that people love to keep up. And like Paradise Waterfall, which has of course become really popular now in green decks. This is a really nice way to close out late games by just putting this into play and then being like, if you cast an event, it's going to cost you 2 cards instead of just the 1, right? And it has a decent sized body too, right? 5k body to attack into leaders really nicely. So I'm a huge fan of this Gion card. I think it's really good. Then we have in a package of events. There's 4 Pheasant Tech. Mistranslation in the sim here, but it's a 1k event where up to 1 of your leaders or characters gets +4. Then you discard 1 card. But because it's a Navy type, you draw that card back. This is like the blue Rad Beam, but it's even better in some situations. You know, it's like, what if Gum Gum Giant was actually balanced? Then you get Pheasant Peck. And then there's just 2 copies of Red Rock and 2 copies of Raging Tiger. Just the typical blue removal, help you get rid of cards that you need to get rid of. Raging Tiger, of course, better against decks that play a bunch of 5s. Red Rocks is for the 9 and 10 drops. And you don't need to play too many, because you're going to be like discarding and drawing so often that if you really need one, you'll be able to find it. But more often than not, you're going to be discarding these cards and just trying to dig for your really good Navy cards. So, and then here we have like the curve fillers, as I like to call them. So the Tashigi Searcher is obvious because you just have an extra additional searcher. Extra consistency is good. Every deck loves having a 1-drop searcher if it can. And then we have 2 4s because we have a bunch of 6s and 8s. So these are the 2 4-drops that you want to put in play before that. So Borsellino is a newer card. It's a 4/5, and once per turn, if this character leaves the field to an opponent's effect, you can discard 1 card instead. And if your leader is Navy during your opponent's turn, it gains blocker and plus 1k power. So this card is kind of not as good as the black Borsellino, and 4/6 blockers kind of are lower than they used to be. But to me, I'm playing Borsellino because it's my concession to try and beat Blackbeard. Blackbeard is very, very tough for this deck to beat, removing all of the on-play effects, especially of Garp, right? That's your big value play. So Borsellino helps in that matchup a lot. It's hard for them to kill, gets in at early attacks, and can potentially put on enough pressure with the combined with the 6/8 to pull you over the finish line. So Cavendish is the card that I came to after playing this deck for a while. I tried a bunch of different cards in the Cavendish slot, but I ended up just coming back to this just because the value you get off it is so good. And it's even not that bad against Zoro. Because of how popular green Zoro is, often you don't really want to play 4/6s because they're going to untap with 5 Dawn, play Tashigi, rest your 6k, and attack it for 8. But Cavendish is the type of character where you're actually okay losing 2 cards to try and save the Cavendish, because then you'll be able to get at least one of those cards back and put some pressure on your opponent's life total in that matchup that often is a race. So the extra little card advantage and value and decent stats. It's not a Navy, so you don't draw off the Cavendish discard. You got to remember that. But it's still just a good value card, and if you get to keep it in play more than 1 turn, it can sometimes like win the game by itself by just drawing you so many cards that they can't keep up. So to me, Kuzan is a pretty linear style deck. You're like cycling and searching in the early game with your like Sengokus and your Tashigis and your Cavendishes. You're trying to tap out every turn, right? You just play the card on curve that you can. And then you're trying to set up Kuzan into Garp into Kuzan again, right? Like that is the most busted thing you can do in this deck for sure. Is Kuzan one of their characters they can't attack. Then you Garp Kuzan, one of their characters they can't attack again. And this is basically like, this line basically guarantees that you'll be ahead on life with your opponent, and you can use that life advantage to just beat them to death with your giant AK bodies before they can stabilize. It does have a tough time sometimes against decks that can actually kill all of your characters. But it definitely is a style of deck where countering early can be really smart, because those early hits will punish you more later when you're in the race situation in the late game. But once Garp comes down, you usually put so much pressure on that you should just be using your giant AK bodies to attack their, 5k leader rather than any of their characters. And then you'll hopefully beat them because you've cycled all your non-counter away, and now you just have Rad Beams and 2Ks in hand, right? So I wanted to talk about a couple of flex cards with the deck as well. Like maybe you don't want to play the maybe you don't want to play the Borsellino, or you don't want to play as many Cavendishes as I'm playing. So there's definitely a couple of other options of stuff you could try. I found that Virgo is actually not bad at all. It currently is the best 5-drop Navy card that you have access to, really, unfortunately. The X-Drake blocker just isn't necessary. Like, knowing the top card of your deck doesn't help you that much in this, because you're just going to draw and discard it anyway. But the 7k stat line is really nice against even Zoro and all of these 6k leaders. You can also just play a cheaper blocker if you're trying to help your Rayleigh matchup. There's the 1-drop Don Quixote Rocinante is a new card from OP12 that helps removal-based matchups. I think it's a little worse than the Borsellino, sorry, against Teach, but it is very good against Lucci. So if one of your blue characters with the Navy type leaves the field during your opponent's effect, you can rest this character instead and discard 1 card from your hand. So it does even protect itself. They cannot KO this thing with removal. If they try, it saves itself, then they have to attack into it. And then the last option is Jozu. You do have the Tashigi Searcher and the Sengoku, so you can bounce one of those with Jozu to have like an extra removal threat. Especially helpful against decks that play a lot of 5 costs, like Zoro and Bonnie, and I'm sure there's others that I can't think of right now. Oh, of course, Buggy. Very helpful against Buggy. So these are like my matchups right now. Kuzan definitely has mostly 50-50 matchups, where a lot of matchups, like, if you win the die roll and you go second, you're likely to win, and if you lose, you're a little bit more likely to lose. But in general, it's just so much about how you draw and how you curve out, and what your opponent plays doesn't matter as much. But definitely I would say, like, Bonnie, Yellow Kid, and Blue-Yellow Nami are all decks that are kind of doing the similar thing to what you're doing, but they're just slower. So Bonnie especially, like, it just doesn't have the same aggro threat against you that Green Zoro does. And they can't stop you from just spamming the board full of Garps. So unless they have multiple 10-drop Doflamingos, it's a very tough matchup. Same thing with Yellow Kid, right? They're just playing 1 character a turn. And once you start playing Garps and just start beating them down, especially the 6-8. The 6-8 is so strong against their 7-9 strategy. And if you can just if you can just find a well-timed Red Rock or Raging Tiger, it helps that matchup a lot. Same thing's true with Blue-Yellow Nami, where them being a 7k leader just doesn't matter if you have all 8k characters in play. And they're just a little bit slower than you, but trying to do the same plan. So the bad matchups are Blue-Purple Luffy, unfortunately. Blackbeard is pretty rough. And Rayleigh is also really a tough matchup. You can win the Rayleigh matchup, but if you go first, you're almost guaranteed to lose. I wouldn't say almost guaranteed, but going first is like so much worse in the Rayleigh matchup. Because if they tap out on 4 for a the 4-cost reveal 2 events Luffy, there's just nothing you can do about it, and you're going to just like get buried in damage. They'll be able to have 2 of the 4-cost Luffy in play before you'll be even able to play a single Kuzan. And Blackbeard, just not having access to Garp is very tough in general. And your deck's just a little too slow to beat Blue-Purple Luffy. You can maybe get there if you have enough 6-8s and Garps. But most of the time, your aggression is not going to be able to punch through, especially their Gum Gum Giants. But it's probably a little better than I'm giving it credit for, but it's still not a matchup I like to play. And then everything else is kind of dependent on you just playing well and drawing well. Like, drawing the 6-8 is so important for so many matchups, especially like Smoker, like Green Purple Luffy. You know, in Green Purple Luffy, if you ever get to play the 6-8 Kuzan and target their Jet Gatling Luffy, it's so tough. They just skip out on 2 entire attacks. Plus, you have a bunch of 8Ks against their 6s. But if they go second and get to go, you know, Zoro Juro into Sanji putting Zoro Juro, it's a tough matchup. Same with Bella Betty, going second into Garps often allows you to aggro them out, and like you have access to Raging Tiger and Pheasant Peck. Buggy, I think you're slightly more favored than 50-50. And they want to go first often, so they'll give you second, which allows you to get a lot of advantage. Yama, you got to be a little scared of Hody Jones, but you can just discard all of your counterless cards until Garps and just have a million 2Ks in hand. Like, you have enough 2Ks and Pheasant Pecks that you shouldn't die in this matchup. So Kuzan is kind of the epitome of a 50-50 deck. It's about curving out well, about like punching face as often as possible at the right times. You know, often you don't even want to like clear their characters as much unless you have to, because you just have a way to like make them not attack. The deck has an abundance of searching and drawing, so like in the late game, you're so likely to win if you just cycle correctly. The same way with that Sakazuki was so good with the discard a card, draw a card every turn. If you want to, you can have nothing but 2Ks in the late game. So definitely, to me, the biggest weakness of the deck is the big gap between going second and going first. You don't have any good 5 costs, and like the 7K Sakazuki is all right, but if you go first and you don't have the Sengoku to play on 3, it's just very tough, right? You only have one good 5 cost to play, which is like the 5-7 Virgo, and that's not even that good. And the only 3 cost you have is Sengoku. So if you go first and don't have Sengoku, it feels so much harder to win. But it's still a really nice budget option, as you only need like 1 or 2 SRs. Right, the only SR is Garp, and if you want to play Aramaki, you can. And it's so much less of a glass cannon style deck than Buggy, because you just have access to more 2Ks, you're less all in, you are discarding cards, but you're drawing them back. And it's less like, oh god, they killed 2 of my characters, what do I do? You can still be like, oh, they killed 2 of my characters, well, I guess I'll just play another Garp and play another 2 characters. So I think Kuzan is definitely going to be a really nice deck for beginner players just getting into the deck, or just getting into the game, especially if OP12 is like your first set. It'd be easy to just like buy 2 OP12 boxes and you'll probably have most of the Kuzan deck just like that. And then whatever's left is just some commons and uncommons that are probably going to be like 25 cents each. So I certainly hope you guys give this deck a try. I hope you like the tutorial. I'll try and post some gameplay matches or add them after this, depending on what I decide. But thanks again for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys next time, all right? Much love.